What I want you to do is stick with what got us here tonight. We're mentally and physically tough, okay?
Final seconds off the clock, and Indiana has won the WNBA championship for the very first time.
Reaching the top of the mountain for then Fever coach Lin Dunn, a long way from those rough early days. The pre-Title IX era, when just getting her college girls team to a game was a challenge.
Because we used to pile in my red Impala, and drive down the road an hour and play somebody, get back in the car and drive back.
40 years later, Lin is still paving a path forward for female athletes.
If you guys know me, you know that I love to win. I can't stand to lose.
With the first pick, the Indiana Fever select Aaliyah Boston, University of South Carolina.
Lin Dunn, high hopes for her beloved Indiana Fever. Life as a player and coach before Title IX. And growing up in small-town Tennessee, where the backyard was all about high jumping, pole vaulting, boxing, just about every other sport under the sun. She's my guest on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast. It is presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. Lin Dunn, a women's sports pioneer, born ahead of her time, an athlete growing up in a Tennessee family where competition was the name of the game. High school girls sports back in the late 60s, illegal in some southern states. Then Title IX came along, and Lin Dunn no longer had to coach for free, beg for gym time, or pile her team into her Impala just to get to games.
And it gives me a great deal of pleasure to welcome to the podcast Hall of Famer, the general manager of the Indiana Fever, Lin Dunn. Lin, thanks so much for taking the time to join me. Hey, you've got to be excited. You've been busy here lately with the draft, and a lot of buzz around the draft picks, the number one overall pick. You got a great player from South Carolina in Aaliyah Boston. Tell me about, and an IU player, I want to talk about that too, but give me your overall thoughts on the draft.
Well, I thought we did a really good job. You just never know how the draft's going to go. The only sure thing is the number one pick, because we picked first. But we did our homework. There wasn't any doubt in our mind that Aaliyah Boston was the pick, that she was going to be the type player that would come in here and have a huge impact on us on the court and off the court. Created a lot of attention, like you said, the buzz about the Fever with Boston. But then I think as the draft went along, when we picked up Grace Berger from IU, we picked up Taylor Mikesell from Ohio State, I think we sent a message that we wanted some more Midwest players and who were very, very good and had tremendous careers. So we started out with a bang, and I thought the whole thing was kind of a bang.
Yeah. What and you mentioned, IU had such a magical year this year, a great year, so much excitement, the packed houses down there. I think I saw some social media posts of you down there a couple of times, maybe checking out some of the action. What does that? Number one, I know you're drafting to get the best players, but is it an added bonus? What does that add to get a player from IU, or as you said, an Ohio State player as well, to get that Big Ten flavor? Does that kind of add to maybe the fan excitement, fan interest in the coming years?
Well, I think it's just like icing on the cake. The cake's wonderful to begin with, and then you put the icing on it, and it happens to be one player an hour away, another player a couple hours away, who had tremendous careers in the Big Ten, and everybody in this area knows about the Big Ten. This is Big Ten headquarters. So it was just kind of a plus that these two players that we picked up at 7 and 13 not only were Midwest players, but were great players. They had tremendous careers. Both stayed for their fifth year, and I think that's important to mention because they got bigger, they got better, they got stronger. I saw the difference in both of them by the end of their fifth year. So excited about both.
Fever have had a tough several years here, no doubt about it. I read something where you were quoted as saying one of the issues may have been the lack of a real identity. As you look at the identity of this Fever team going forward with these new draft picks, the nucleus of what's there now going forward, what can you identify or describe what you'd like that identity to be?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that when Tamika Catchings was here, one of the great players all time in the history of women's basketball, 4-time Olympian, gold medal Olympian, that was a focal point of our championship. When she retired, that's when we lost a piece of our identity in that we will defend. We will defend you 24/7. That intensity, that fierceness, that competitiveness that she had all those years, it's hard to replace. And I think we struggled replacing that. And then during that period of time, there were some other changes. Kelly Crosskopf left, I left, Stephanie White left. So we had some turnover in leadership too. And so I think I think now we're in a position where we're going to get back on track, reemphasize our identity, who we want to be, create some stability in upper management, and then create some credibility by the players that we're drafting.
Yeah. And I know you can't answer this, but in terms of a rebuild, I've seen some people say that, this is a rebuild for the Fever, but not necessarily something that would take a long time, that this is something that you can get back on track without, a long and elongated process. Would you agree with that?
I think we are actually a little bit ahead of schedule of my 3-year plan. This is year 2. Last year, we drafted 5 young rookies, exceptional. This year, we drafted 5 more. We picked up a couple of key players in free agency, some veterans, a new coaching staff. So I feel like we are where we need to be and a little bit ahead with reloading. Let's call it reloading.
Yeah.
Because a rebuild sounds much lengthier.
Yep.
And it has to be. I honestly believe that we can compete this year for that last spot in the playoffs. That we, the 4 of us that didn't get in last year, have enough firepower to get in the mix and fight to get into the playoffs. And that's exactly what we want to do. We want our fans to come back, be with us the whole season, cheer us on, love the way we play, how hard we play, how we defend, how much better we've gotten, but we're still young. And then get excited about chasing that last playoff spot. That's what we want to do.
Yeah, yeah. You are back. I think you served in the GM role on an interim basis now full time, but you had been in kind of retirement, right? And you came out of that retirement. And I know I saw a quote that you said the Indiana Fever would be the only franchise that you would come out of retirement for.
Well, there's no doubt about that. I mean, I retired in 2014. I have a consulting company. I coach coaches, and I have several clients that I was working with in the college game. And then when the Fever management reached out to me and asked me to come back on an interim basis, I couldn't say no. I have so much respect for Rick Fuson and Jim Morris and Kelly Crosskopf and the Pacers and the Pacer Sports and Entertainment. And I love the Fever, and I wanted to do whatever I could do to help get this franchise back where it should be. And I thought I could do, I wasn't sure the interim title, and then I realized it's going to take longer than 6 months. So yeah. I was committed once I met with Rick, to coming up with a 3-year plan. Here's what we want to do year 1. Here's what we want to do year 2, and this is year 3. And so I thought, well, am I going to be interim for 3 years? And so I realized that might adversely affect us in free agency. The players and the agents want to know who's in charge. Who's. And so I agreed to take that off and invest over the next 3-4 years and get us where we need to be. Once you get in those playoffs, anything can happen.
Right.
So nobody ever thought we'd win a championship when we didn't have home court. So you just got to get in, and then you just kind of clawed up, and you're doing something you hadn't expected to do.
Yeah. Lynn, you've been around the game for a long time at the highest levels. How would you assess the state of the women's game? Because, as I look at it, and certainly this year in the college game, closer to home, IU certainly got a lot of attention. But if you look at the TV viewership numbers, record numbers on ESPN for the Final Four and the tournament, I think the pro level, I think the draft, maybe WNBA draft got record numbers as well. How would you assess the state of the women's game? Seems to be in a pretty good place.
Well, I would use the word exploded. It's exploded. I mean, it's amazing. But I'm not surprised. I think we're seeing all of the benefits, the fruits of Title IX, these young women getting opportunities when they're 3 and 4 years old and 5, and they're getting great coaching in junior high and high school, fantastic coaching in college. They play an unbelievably competitive game. They can look at Caitlin Clark. My goodness gracious, she reminds me of Steph Curry.
Yeah.
So we have a wonderful product that people enjoy watching. And so this explosion that's happened, I'm hoping it's contagious. I'm hoping it's going to be contagious all across America, not just in the Big Ten. Big Ten had record crowds. But the Final Four in Dallas was huge. The viewership was 9.9 million, highest we've ever had. So I'm hopeful that it's going to carry over to the WNBA and it's going to continue to explode.
You mentioned Title IX, and certainly, and this year, 50 years, marking 50 years since the passage of that landmark legislation authored by Indiana Senator Birch Bayh, and you have been just a staunch supporter and driver of Title IX for a lot of years. I know I read somewhere where you were described as an agitator and an instigator for Title IX and equality. How would you agree with that assessment?
Well, that's a kind assessment. Agitator, instigator. A lot of people felt strongly that Title IX was not legal and it was not going to work and it was going to cost men's sports. And that was not true. And we see now that there's no reason why both men and women's sports can't be successful. But we had to keep pushing and we had to keep fighting. We had to keep protecting. We had to treasure a piece of legislation that means so much to women's opportunities. And so, I coached before Title IX. I know what it was like, and I've seen the growth and the opportunities that have been opened, the doors that have been opened for women, and it's powerful.
Yeah. Lynn, give me some of the stories, some of the examples, because I think so many women, girls in the game today, never experienced, pre-Title IX. So really probably don't fully appreciate how things were back in the day and back not only when you coached, but when you were a young athlete and you just didn't hardly have the opportunities. What was it like in that scenario?
Well, I spent my early years in Alabama, and it was against the law for girls to play high school basketball. So I did not get to play high school basketball until we moved to Tennessee. And then I got to play 2 years in high school. I get to college, there are no teams. There are no basketball teams. This is in the 60s in the universities, no scholarships, nothing. We played a little badminton, a little tennis, sports that were ladylike, that were acceptable. And so we're talking going from slim and none to unbelievable opportunities. Then when I first started coaching, it was still before Title IX, no budget, couldn't use the gym. Oh, you can use the gym at 6 a.m. or 9 p.m. at night, but nobody else needs it. And just limited resources. And it was tough. It was really hard. And the best thing that happened to us was Title IX. And the men and women that pushed for that legislation to become law and that it be implemented and it be enforced. And it's been a catalyst for unbelievable opportunities for girls and women.
Yeah, and the impact has had, I know, immeasurable to be sure. You mentioned in the coaching game and just access to facilities and those types of things. How tough was it to coach in that kind of that pre-Title IX environment?
Unbelievably tough. I look back now sometimes, and, I had no assistance. I was actually the volunteer coach.
I read that you coached at one time. You coached for no pay.
When I started out at Austin Peay way back in 1970, I was a physical education teacher and the cheerleader sponsor. I drove the cheerleaders around. And so I said, hey, look, we've got to have some teams for these women. We've got to have volleyball, basketball, tennis. And they just said, well, you can have it, but you're not going to have a budget. I don't know when you're going to get in the gym. And so, it was just me saying, hey, I didn't get to play, but I'm going to see if you want to play. So it was just, historic for me. I think about the different places that I worked where I gave the first ever scholarship,
Wow.
or a female athlete in one of those sports. And now to see what they have, sometimes it's just overwhelming to me. When I worked a few years at Kentucky, and the first time I went with them on a charter flight, and I took a picture of the airplane. I couldn't believe how big the plane was that this team was getting on. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Because we used to pile in the back of my red Impala, and drive down the road an hour and play somebody, get back in the car and drive back. And so it was just amazing to see the progress.
To keep the momentum going and to keep, to leverage, to take advantage of the positive when it comes to women's sports and athletics. Are there things that need, as we're present day, 2023, new challenges, opportunities, those types of things? What needs to happen? Is there something that you'd like to see happen in women's athletics, whether it's basketball or any sport, to keep that momentum going?
Well, I think the visibility that we've gotten on with TV packages, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the new TV package is going to be for the college women's game. I know they're going to renegotiate the contract and let the women stand alone. What our TV package will be like in the WNBA. But the other thing that I'm hoping that we will learn some lessons from the path that the men have already gone down. We don't have to do everything just like they've done it. So we can say, oh, that was a good idea, or that wasn't a good idea. So I hope we'll use Big Brother as an example of what works and what might not be the right thing to do.
We'll have much more with Indiana Fever General Manager Lin Dunn. When we return, we'll talk about early days growing up in Tennessee and a Hall of Fame career, more than 500 wins, and a lot more when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
Welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick, and my guest this week, really happy to have Lin Dunn, the Hall of Fame coach, the current general manager of the Indiana Fever, and truly a pioneer in athletics. And Lin, you're a Tennessee native, right?
Born in Nashville.
Born in Nashville. Now, I saw Dresden. Where's Dresden?
Dresden is way over in the northwest corner of Tennessee. I don't know if you've ever heard of a place called Reelfoot Lake. It's a beautiful little area. I'm 15 miles from the Kentucky border. Murray State University's up there. There that way is Paducah, Kentucky. But small little town, Weakley County, UT Martin, where I went to college, is there. Dresden, where I played 2 years of high school basketball, is there. I actually have a home. My grandparents built it. My mother inherited it, and now I have it.
Oh, that's great. That's pretty country there. What was growing up like in Tennessee for you?
Well, I was very fortunate that I was born into a family of highly educated people, highly competitive people. People always ask me, how did you get so competitive? And I said, well, my father was a Marine that ran track at Vanderbilt. And so he pushed us 24/7. My grandfather was the county judge. My aunt was the first woman to get one of the first women to get a law degree at Vanderbilt. My grandmother taught in a one-room schoolhouse. So everybody was always pushing us to be educated and to be competitive. And so it's just part of who I am.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say, it shouldn't be a surprise then, in terms of being competitive, being a pioneer, pushing and doing the things you've done around Title IX and some of these other things kind of came naturally, right, from your family?
Absolutely. And of course, I'm a firstborn, first grandchild, and then I'm a Taurus bull. So, I mean, you put that all together and gracious.
Yeah. Look out. What, so you play all sports, any kind of sports you could be around?
Like I said, my father, we had a pole jump, we had a high jump pole vaulting pit in the backyard. We played baseball, softball, football, boxing. We've had boxing gloves. And he put my brother and I through the whole thing.
That is outstanding. You mentioned University of Tennessee, Martin. That's where you went to college. Did you think about going anywhere else, or was that just a natural choice? 10
miles down the road, could afford to go. Got one of those, I forget what they call them, those student loans. We couldn't afford, there were no scholarships, and loved every minute of it. But unfortunately, we still hadn't started the teams. Now, we did play some competitive badminton, play a little bit of competitive tennis. And so once I left there, got my degree, and went to UT Knoxville to get my master's, I'm thinking, I'm going to be a physical education teacher. I'm going to be a coach. And I'm going to create some opportunities for women that I didn't get. So wherever I go to work, I'm going to make sure we have teams.
So that seed was kind of planted by your experiences in high school and college. That kind of drove you to do that.
Well, and I think I drove the people at UT Martin crazy because I couldn't understand why we didn't have a women's basketball team. They were starting up, or Middle Tennessee State, Tennessee Tech. Why don't we have a team? Why don't we have a team? And I think they were really glad when I graduated. But the next year, this is really interesting. The next year, they did start that first ever women's basketball team at UT Martin, and Pat Head Summit was a freshman on that first ever team.
Really? Wow. When did you first? Is that when you first met, or when did you first connect with her?
Well, I'd known Pat for a while because we played summer softball together, where you traveled around. And I'd actually followed her high school career, and I was hoping that she would come to Austin Peay, which was only about, 30, 40 minutes from her home. And then I later found out that she wanted to get further away from home. She brought on that farm with her dad and baling hay and everything. And she said, look, Coach, I got to get at least 2 hours away, And, okay, I get it. So we were friends for a long, long time.
Describe your relationship, because she, so well documented the impact that she had on so many players and individuals throughout her many years in the game and beyond. Describe your relationship with her.
Pat and I were always coaching friends, colleagues, off the court. We kind of grown up together in Tennessee. The great thing about Pat was she was not only a great coach, but she was a great person. And if you played for her, or if you were her friend, it was for life. You know what I'm saying? Like, she wanted you to be the very best that you could be on the court and off the court. She was extremely demanding. She wasn't quite as demanding as Bobby Knight, but she had those tendencies of, hey, we're going to do this really well all the time. And not just anybody could play for her.
Yeah. Was she a mentor of yours? You're more of a colleague or mentor? Or
we were more side by side.
Yeah.
We did clinics together. We went on basketball retreats together. Sometimes she would reach out to me about a particular strategy, and I would reach out to her. But I always had enormous respect for her and what she was able to accomplish. And the great thing about Pat is, as the game grew, she adapted. One of the things Pat did is, and this is something Bobby didn't do, she adapted to the changing of how we're going to treat players.
Yeah.
But we can't be quite as, we can be demanding, but we can't be demeaning. And so that was one of the things that I thought was great about Pat, is that she adapted to the change of times of how we're going to treat players. We're still going to make them be the best they can be, but some of the things that we've done in the past were not acceptable. And so I give her a lot of credit for that.
Yeah. Did you have any, everyone has mentors to a certain degree. Can you identify mentors who were very important in your career, in your life?
Well, I would say Jody Conrad, that coached at Texas. I was her assistant coach for the Pan Am team. Learned a lot from Jody. Of course, when I was coaching for 2 years at Ole Miss, Margaret Way, that led Delta State to 3 national championships, was right down the road, and I have some tremendous respect for her and what she accomplished there. And then my mentors were probably people, outside. Billie Jean King, my grandmother, my aunt that went to Vanderbilt. Strong, powerful women that were creating opportunities for other women.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned being your desire to be a PE teacher and a coach. Did you anticipate, being more than a high school coach or maybe a college coach? If any design on doing what you ended up doing, coaching at the highest level?
I started out as a French major. And that lasted about 2 weeks until the instructor said, Miss Lin, you're destroying one of the most beautiful languages in the history of the world. I'd like to suggest you change majors. And I said, I think you're right. And so I knew I wanted to be around sports, but I didn't know the route. And at that particular time in the 60s, it was through health, physical education, recreation. So I switched to that major. And then when I got my degree, another mentor of mine who coached and who taught there at UT Martin, she said, you need to go on to college. You need to get your master's at UT Knoxville and then work in college and help create these opportunities that you didn't have. And I said, I'm all in, and she helped me get a graduate assistantship at Knoxville. And then from then on, it was Austin Peay, Ole Miss, University of Miami, Purdue.
Yeah.
Always in college, loved it. Wouldn't trade it for the world.
Well, and this is, and I'm sure you've been asked this a number of times before. I always think it's an unfair question, but as you look back on your career, is there, a most rewarding aspect of your coaching career that you kind of lean or reflect back on?
I think my legacy, when all said and done, will be that wherever I worked, wherever I coached or taught, when I left, it was better than when I got there.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to make things better, make opportunities greater, get better resources, improve the team, improve everything about the situation that I came into. And so I don't know if that means I'm a builder. I don't know what it means. But to me, to be able to come in and then when you leave, things are better. And I always felt my players, do my players get better? Do they get a little bit better every day? Do they get better from the beginning of the season to the end? And then I've succeeded.
Yeah. I got to ask you about the 2012 WNBA championship here with the Fever. What's your favorite memory or remembrance of that year? Because it was certainly special for Indianapolis. I know a lot of people want to get the Fever back to that level, to be sure. But think back to that season and how special it was for you.
Well, the minute you said that, the thing that came into my mind was the fact that we weren't supposed to be there. We weren't supposed to be in the finals. And when you look back to that crucial playoff game, where we had to win the third game in Atlanta, we had to win the third game in Connecticut in order to do that. But most of all, I remember us fighting through adversity. Somebody would get hurt. Katie Douglas breaks her ankle, goes down, and Jeanette Poland steps up and hits 5 threes in Connecticut, and we win that game. And then Jeanette Poland hurts her knee, and then Karima Christmas steps up. And so it was just a moment in time where no matter what adversity we faced, we found a way to deal with it. And so as we fought through adversity, we just got stronger and stronger. We had less players, but we were really able to pull together, and to be able to beat Minnesota without home court advantage. Sometimes I still have to pull out that film and look at it and make sure that did we really win?
Did that really happen? Yeah, right.
Did it really happen?
Lynn, you've had such a long and successful career, but as we wind up here, it seems to me that you're, if anything, energized about what's next with the Fever. You're coming off a big draft here, and as you say, you're well into this plan to get the Fever back on track. What energized, re-energized? What would be the best description for Lin Dunn heading into this next season?
I'm very enthusiastic and very energized about the young talent that we have. I'm just really excited about our new coaching staff. Christy Sides and the experiences that she's already had in the W and overseas. She is high energy. She's from the South. She's a wonderful person to be around. She understands the value of relationships, and she's put together a very strong coaching staff. So there's a lot to be excited about. The draft picks, the free agents, the coaching staff. And then on top of that, now we're talking about the icing on the cake. We are back in the beautiful Gainbridge, unbelievably renovated, which I always thought it was beautiful anyway, arena. And so we're back practicing here all the time. We're back playing here all the time. So there's really a lot of things in line here for us to get back on track. And we just need the fans to come back. We just need them to come back for our 20 home games, opening night, May 19th, and just get on board with us and remember what it was like when we won that championship. And I'll never forget that crowd. That was just fantastic.
Special, yeah.
Wonderful. But there's no reason why we can't do it again.
Yeah. Hey, Lynn, you mentioned it. I would just one more topic is that reimagined, refurbished Gainbridge Fieldhouse, because not only inside, but now the plaza and that area outside. So, I think the ingredients are there for fans to come down and see some great basketball, but also engage in what is going to be a pretty electric kind of atmosphere or vibe that's around this new Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
There's no doubt, the Gainbridge Fieldhouse now with the adjoining plaza that they built, the new restaurants, it's a destination. You can come down, you can eat 2 different restaurants. We've got our gorgeous facility, the outdoor court. Mel Raines and Rick Fuzon and Herb Simon have done a fantastic job creating this wonderful new, I guess they're calling it the plaza. The Gainbridge Fieldhouse for the fans to come back downtown. It's re-energizing, in my opinion, downtown Indy.
Or look forward to coming down and checking out the Fever, the new draft picks, and much more in downtown Indianapolis. Lin Dunn, has been a real treat to catch up with you, talk a little bit about your amazing Hall of Fame career, and also look forward to some big wins for the Indiana Fever. Thanks for joining us. And thank you for joining us on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast. It's a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes and get Indiana business news 24/7 at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.